If you've been doing the exact same exercise with the exact same weight and the exact same sets and reps for even a couple months, you're not going to see progress, because we have to give the body a reason to adapt. If you don't give it a reason to adapt, it will not build strength. It will maintain, but that's all you're going to get. So when you're wondering, gosh, I do glute exercises all the time, why am I not any stronger? Well, have you given your glutes a reason to become stronger? Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unchoreographed Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jenna Lower, and today I want to talk to you about something that happened with a client this week that I thought would be really relevant for a lot of you. So far on this podcast, in most of these episodes, we've talked a lot about sort of the beginning of the story. What happens when you're trying to be diagnosed or figure out if you need surgery and all these types of things. And what I want to kind of speak to today is the group of people who have maybe already been working out. Maybe you've already been doing physical therapy. You're a little further along in your journey, because this is the case that happened with my client this morning, who I've been seeing for a little while now. So we've kind of already gone through those early phases of calming her symptoms. She's relearned her movement patterns really well. And now we're starting to reintegrate it back into her exercise program. And I'm a big fan of making sure that when we're integrating exercises, it's something that the client really wants to be doing. Maybe it's the routine that they've already been used to doing, but trying to make it work with the physical therapy side of things, so that instead of having these two separate programs, you have one really comprehensive program that's actually progressing you towards the goals that you have, both from a pain standpoint, but then also just from a, exercise standpoint. If it's getting stronger or being able to do more reps of something, whatever that is. So I really like to merge those two worlds together. So with this client, when we started getting into what her routine looked like in the past, and maybe some things she'd still currently been doing. She liked to do a lot of strength training at home. And for her, she was following along with the Peloton app, which I love. I think that's a great resource to be able to have at home, so you don't have to go into the gym. It's perfect for moms, short, quick workouts. But when we really started to dive into, what does the structure of the program that you're doing look like? And have you been making progress in the direction that you wanted to? It was pretty evident that up to this point, she really had no structure. There was no clear progression of what she was doing. And I think a lot of us can relate to this, right? You know that you want to do your workout, so you go into the Peloton app or whatever it is, and you just pick a workout for the day. And that's the workout that you do based on how you feel. Do I feel like upper body today? Do I feel like lower body today? Where am I sore? Where do I need more recovery? And we just pick something. And I think that that's fine to a certain extent. However, if there's no progression in what you're doing and structure in what you're doing, just normal strength and conditioning practices tell us that you're not really going to see a whole lot of long-term gain or change. And this becomes really important when you are rehabbing your hip, because you need to actually get stronger. You know this, right? Like, we need to build mobility. You need to change those movement patterns. And so not having any sort of consistency in the program that you're doing makes it really hard to actually see those changes happen over the course of a couple weeks. And while there still may be progress that happens, it's going to be either very up and down or just very slow. So I want to walk you through exactly what I did with her and the plan that we created for her, so that she is able to actually see those changes happen now that she's in a better place with her pain. So I think really the problem here, when you are looking at that being your standard workout, the just random workouts, your results are going to be really random there. And too much variety can actually lead to not enough progress. And so what we want to do is we want to sort of systematize what you're doing so that your results are not random anymore, and that you actually are making this like strategic progress along the way. There's something in the strength and conditioning world known as adaptation. And what this is our body is only going to adapt to the stresses that we place on it. And then there's also specificity of training, which means that the adaptations that are made are specific to the type of training that you do. So an example would be if you want to gain more cardiovascular strength, you have to do cardiovascular training, right? Strength training is not going to change your cardiovascular output, and vice versa. So that's the specificity part. So again, and then the adaptation is we actually have to stress our body so that it can adapt and change over time. Your body doesn't just automatically change because you did a hard workout. It changes because you gave it a reason to start adapting. And that's what we want to encourage here. So when we're looking at what are the goals for somebody going through rehab for hip impingement or labral tear or chronic pain, we have to look at what really is the end goal here. And we know that, okay, we need some strength. If you guys have been following along, you know my process pretty well by now. Number 1 is we're calming symptoms. Number 2 is we're learning movement patterns. And once those 2 things are in place, it is time to move into strengthening. Again, make sure you've done those foundations first. Don't just jump ahead here. But if you are ready for the strength phase, we have to look at what are the goals. What are the muscles that need to be strengthened? Because now I know, okay, these are the muscle groups that I have to make sure are put into my program. What are my end goals? So what do I want to be able to do again? Do I want to be able to dance again? Do I want to be able to run? Do I want to be able to just live life? Maybe I'm having a hard time picking up a laundry basket and carrying it up the stairs, right? It can just be functional things as well. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure that you're addressing the muscle groups that need to be addressed from a strength perspective, and you are addressing the movements that are required of your goal, whatever that goal is. So for instance, if it is to be able to lift the laundry basket and walk up the stairs, well, we probably need to make sure that we are doing something where you have some weight or load in front of your body, holding onto something, goblet squats, things like that. We also need to make sure that you have enough strength in the hip and stability in the hip that you can perform a step up while you're holding weight. So maybe a step up would be a good exercise. So we're kind of like dictating what exercises are going to be best for you based on what your end goal is. Now, again, the most important piece before you even get to this is to make sure you have good patterns. So maybe we know, okay, I want to be able to lift this thing up the stairs, but first I just need to be able to make sure, can I go up a stair without any additional load and it doesn't reproduce my symptoms? Can I hold my alignment? Can I hold the stability and the movement patterns that I've worked so hard to learn? Then we add the load on top of that. And so before we even start talking about progressing weights and sets and reps and all of that, we just have to look at the movement itself and make sure that is being addressed specific to your goals and your imbalances. Now, once that has happened, and we start to basically, once we've identified what the goals are for you and where your imbalances are, we start to build the program. So with my client, that's basically what we did is we said, okay, you're sort of moving into this next phase of strength training. Let's reassess and see currently where are your imbalances. It's been a few weeks since we've done that. So where are your imbalances? What's your current level of strength and mobility? And then let's make sure that we're on track for what your goals are. We've already kind of said what they are, but let's just make sure that that's still accurate and what you want to work towards. And from there, we start building a skeleton of a program. Now, I say skeleton because the goal is that eventually what I want for my clients is for them to feel comfortable understanding how to build their own program. So as we're building it, it's not that there's not like one magical exercise that we're going to put in the program that's going to like be the best thing. Again, if we go back to the lifting the laundry basket up the stairs, okay, well, doing a step up is one option of an exercise that could be good for that. But there's also 5 other options of things that could be really good for that. And none of them are necessarily right or wrong. It just depends on a few things, right? It can be, again, it depends on, is it your goal, obviously? Can you do it with good form? Do you even like the movement? Maybe you hate that exercise. I'm not going to force you to do something that you absolutely hate. So there's a bunch of different exercises that we can pick, and then we can swap them in and out of that skeleton program that we're building. And this is really cool when we do it this way because it gives, initially I am the one for my clients doing a lot of the programming, and I tell them, hey, I want you to do this, this, and this. But as we're going through the process, slowly and gradually, you're having them start to take that part over. Hey, do you like this exercise? Maybe you could swap this thing for it. Or, hey, in the past you did these other exercises. Well, these are really similar to this step up. So you could go ahead and swap one of those 3 things in when you feel like you're ready. Or maybe each week to week you get sick of the same exercises. So as long as you know that you're hitting the right number of sets per muscle group per week, you are going to get strength changes. And again, as long as you're structured in doing that. The exercise itself can vary, and that's totally fine. And I think this is where people get really caught up. A lot of the time, I think people are like, what exercise should I be doing? My response is generally, it's not the exercise that matters. It's all the other stuff. It's how are you moving when you do it? How, is it directed towards your goal? Is it something that you can move through with good patterns? Is it something you enjoy? Like, these things to me are far more important than the actual exercise itself, because there's a million good exercises out there. And once you figure that out, you will see that the possibilities are endless, but you still need to have a structure to what you're doing. So we're trying to build a skeleton of your program over the program itself. Now, initially with this client, again, we started with, hey, here's the program, go ahead and follow it. Within the next couple weeks, I know that she will start to be able to have the independence to change some things around there. I think the other really important thing here when we're starting to build out strength programs is to not overcomplicate things. You do not need 50 different exercises in your program. When people get to this phase, I tend to keep the exercises relatively consistent for about a month. Not always. Of course, we're adapting and changing based on how your body is responding. But I do tend to keep the exercises consistent for a period of time because we want to see changes. And we have to actually do things with a bit of consistency so that we can see the strength gains happening. So it allows us to adjust how much weight that you're doing with that specific exercise or the reps or the sets. So we are still progressing within that 4-week period, but we're not just randomly changing out and switching up exercises. This is where, when you just go in and you pull up the Peloton app and you grab a random exercise, each time you do that, the exercises that are within that program are probably different, right? So, and there may be a little bit of consistency there. I think there's always some foundational movements that are the same across the board, but you have much more control over your rehab program and your strength training program when you are the one that is putting the exercises in there versus somebody else. Now, I'm not saying to not go do Peloton or to go to a class workout or whatever. If that is something that you enjoy, then absolutely keep doing it. But what you could then do is with your therapist or whoever you're working with, or maybe just even on your own, you come up with even 2 to 3 accessory exercises that you do consistently for your body. It doesn't need to be a whole nother workout or whole list. It could just be 2 to 3 things that maybe you do as your warm up or your cool down. Sometimes they work great as a warm up, and then you get those movements in consistently throughout the week that you need. Or if it's more of a strength-based thing, you can just tack it on to the end of the workout. I make sure that even when I do that Peloton app, that I get squats in at least, twice throughout my week. And so I just tack that on to the end of my routine. So that's how you can still do the things that you love, but still build in some consistency. And that can be a really, really easy way to do that. This client in particular, I think one of her other biggest issues was that she had been doing these workouts. And so there was some consistency in the movements that she was doing. However, she had been doing the exact same weight for, at this point, she said years. So 15 pounds. She can do squats pain-free. That's never been an issue for her. But she's been doing a 15-pound goblet, dumbbell squat for years, she said. Same weight, same reps, really hasn't changed anything. Now, if you are somebody that has, even if you haven't gone through this process of trying to rehab your hip yet, and because somebody's told you, okay, I know I need to get stronger, and you're wondering, well, why the heck haven't I gotten stronger yet? I would urge you to look at how you've been programming your exercises. Because if you've been doing the exact same exercise with the exact same weight and the exact same sets and reps for even a couple months, you're not going to see progress because we have to give the give the body a reason to adapt. If you don't give it a reason to adapt, it will not build strength. It will maintain, but that's all you're going to get. So when you're wondering, gosh, I do glute exercises all the time, why am I not any stronger? Well, have you given your glutes a reason to become stronger? And there's a lot of different ways that you can change and get the body to adapt. There's a lot of things that you can do. So obviously progressing weight is one of them, but also progressing, maybe you don't have access to a heavier dumbbell. So can we just change something else about the exercise? Can you change the tempo that you do it? Maybe with a squat, do a 5-second hold at the bottom, or go down slow, pause, and power up fast. So you can change tempo. You can change how many reps you do. You can change how many sets you do. You can just change up the movement to make it more challenging. Maybe it's single leg or a sit to stand or whatever. There's so many different things that you can try. But moral of the story is you have to give your body a reason to adapt. And if you don't do that, it will not change. So you can be doing all the glute exercises in the world and your hip still hurts because your glutes actually haven't gotten any stronger because you haven't done anything to make them stronger. So again, this is why having a structured program becomes really important, or at least some structure to the way that you go about doing your routine and progressing things. Now, I think it's really important to, when you're building this skeleton program, to make sure that you hit a couple key movements. I know I said that, there's not specific exercises that you need to put in there. There's no magic exercises. There's a million good exercises out there. However, there are a few really functional movements that I tend to include for everybody. So for me, I always make sure that there is some version of squatting, there is some version of deadlifting, and there is some version of a single leg or split stance movement. Now, again, lots of variety within those types of exercises, but those are the lower body foundations that I always want to make sure are happening. As far as how you go about achieving those functional movements, I think everything else branches off of those three movements for the lower body in one way or another. Everything is either a version of a squat, a hinging deadlift, or a single leg or split stance. So again, you can swap in and out whatever you want. Maybe it's squats, and then the next round of exercises you change up or you alternate in with, a single leg sit to stand from the bench. Well, that's still a squatting movement. We're just changing up the difficulty or the challenge level of it. Same thing with a deadlift. Maybe you switch from a deadlift, but into a kickstand RDL. Still a deadlift hinging movement, but just a very different version of it that will maybe target the muscle in a little different way, challenge you in a different way. So, and then same thing with single leg. So those are the three foundational movements that I will keep in someone's program no matter what. And then how we swap the exercises in and out will change, as well as how we progress. So obviously, pretty straightforward if you want to just add more weight when you feel ready, but also we can change tempo, reps, sets, all of that stuff can be altered as well. How do you know when you're ready to progress? I think this is honestly, I'll probably do an entire podcast episode on just this, but just to kind of give you a quick way right now, the best way that I teach people, again, once you are in the strength phase, not the I'm learning my rehab exercises phase, but I've learned it, I'm just strengthening, I don't have pain. I use something called reps in reserve, and it's just a really quick self-check of how hard you're working. So all this means is when you, and I generally also, I should probably note, I don't do this with every single exercise because not every single exercise needs to have this effect, but I do it with the big ones. So the squatting motions, the deadlift motions, maybe lunges, or basically just the bigger movements, not the accessory type movements. So you essentially, what you would do is say that you're programmed to do 3 sets of 10 of your squat. At the end of that set, that third set of 10, you would just simply ask yourself, with this number of sets and reps and weight that I just used, how many more repetitions do I feel like I could do? Do I feel like I could do 10 more? Because if I do, my weight is probably too light, or basically I need to progress myself in some way. If I feel like I can barely squeak out that last rep and I went to failure, then my weight might be, I might have added a little too much weight on it. It's a little too heavy. So I may need to back off. So what you're striving for in this phase is somewhere between 2 to 3 more reps. So you do your 3 sets of 10 at maybe 25 pounds of your squat. And at the end, I'm going to just simply ask myself, how many more reps do I feel like I could do? If I feel like I can do just 2 to 3 more, then perfect. That rep weight combination was exactly what I need for right now. And eventually it's going to get to the point where you're like, I feel like I could do 5 more of those, 6 more of those. And when that happens, all you do is you adjust one of those variables. So I can either go up to 25. I could go to like 27.5 pounds. I think that's what the dumbbells usually go up as. Or I could say, well, I don't think I'm quite ready to add more weight on, so I'm going to just do sets of 12 instead. And then I wait for that same thing to happen. Maybe I go back down to 2 to 3 reps in reserve, but as I do that 12 reps for a little while, a few times into that workout, it's like, oh, now I actually am back at I could do 6 to 7 more of these. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and add more weight. And the really cool thing about this is now you start to be able to progress your program on your own. Guys, this is all about building independence. It's not about your physical therapist or your trainer or whoever telling you what to do. And I understand that sometimes that's what you want, and that's fine. But I also think it is extremely important for my clients to be able to do this for themselves, because I am not going to be next to them every single time they're doing a workout. I'm not going to be there forever to help them progress. So if I've done my job, if I can teach them, how do you understand how to do this on your own? And that's what I would encourage you guys to do. And again, if you are working with a physical therapist or a trainer or whoever, or maybe you're not working with anybody, basically, if nobody's ever taught you how to understand these concepts and how to do this for yourself, my number one recommendation to you would be to find somebody who can teach you this. Because this is what empowers you to be able to do it for yourself versus relying on somebody else. You are the only one that can really rehab that hip. So you have to know how to do these things for yourself. And of course, like I mentioned, this is a bit later on in the process. This is further down the line when, you've already done the work of calming the symptoms and learning the movement pattern. So I don't want you to just jump into this. If you're somebody that hasn't done those foundations, please do not jump ahead and just go straight into the strength programming stuff. There are other things that need to happen. But if you're somebody who's at this phase, I think this is a really important conversation for you to have and to hear. So I hope that was helpful. If you guys have any questions, you can always reach out, drop me a comment, and we'll have a chat about it. If you ever feel like you are looking for somebody to give you a little bit more guidance, you know where to find me. Please reach out. I'm happy to be that person for you and help you. And I hope that this was helpful for you guys. So I will see you back here next week on Unchoreographed. Have a great week, everybody.